Okay, now we're going to do the classic 3D extrusion duplication method, which was explained in the creativecow.net link that I sent you. I will put that also in the comments. So you can use an expression to automatically position each duplicated layer in Z space, and this is important because otherwise you'd have to type it into every single layer, and you need to have a lot of layers to make it work. So let's first create a comp, and we'll call this comp your last name, your first initial, and duplication. Make sure it's the same size as before, 720. So 1280 pixels by 720, 29.97 frames per second, 5 seconds, and say OK. Go to the T text tool and double click to create an insertion point. And let's go ahead and I'm going to go back to one view here, because first I want to get my text in. Now we're going to just type your first name, because this uses a lot of memory and we want to make sure we go through all the steps as quickly as possible. So I'm going to use my nickname because it's shorter, and I will make sure to select the whole thing, and I'm going to set it to white, and I want it to be 120 px. I want it to be centered. Or let's change it to bold. Helvetica bold. That way it'll have a lot more strength to it. And now Command S to save it. Because of the way that we're going to do this, it is best if we pre-compose it, so you'll be able to change the text, and you won't have to change the text on every layer. So we'll pre-compose it, and then we will duplicate the pre-composed layer. So right-click on that layer and go down to pre-compose. And you want to call this source. Make sure you're moving all attributes into the new composition. And now Command Save again, Command S. Click in the 3D field to make this a three-dimensional layer. Making sure that your layer is still selected, press P to work on position. This is where we will add the expression, and we will use the pick whip to write the expression. Make sure not to type until I tell you to type something. We will first type the bracket key, then use the pick whip twice with commas between, then type the words of an expression, and then type the close bracket. I'm telling you this now because I got the first time I messed it up, and I needed to Command Z like 6 or 8 times before I could get back to where I was. So first we want to hold down Option and click the position stopwatch. You'll see that the expression position comes up, and this is where we start typing. We're going to type the open bracket. So come up to the open bracket and press open bracket. Now we want to get the pick whip that's over here next to the expression. Pull it out and drag it up to the X value. And let go. Now press comma, and you can put a space to make it easier to read. Spaces don't make any difference. Now we want to get the pick whip next to the expression and drag it up to the Y value. Once again, press comma, put in a space. Now you want to type the words index and then the -1 and type the close bracket. And now you can press the enter on your numeric keypad, or if you don't have a numeric keypad, you can just click over in the gray. And it has accepted that, so there's not a problem. If it didn't like it, if there was something wrong with the expression as you had typed it, it will give you a warning, and then you'll have to undo and go back and do it again. And most likely it will be something like leaving out the commas or not connecting it to the correct number. But this is what you wanted to say, because the transform position is going to be whatever it says in the x value for the first, whatever it says in the y value for the second, and then for the third it is the index, which is a number which is referring to the number of the layer, -1. So we'll take the number of the layer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and it'll take 1 away from that, and it will place that, the object, on that Z space. So this is what the expression is going to do. And now, with the layer still selected, so make sure it's selected, you want to hit Command D about 19 times, so you'll have 20 layers. So this is why you didn't want to type this in every single layer. You didn't want to have to go into every single Z and type in a number. Here we go, Command D, Command D, Command D. Just keep doing it. There we go. When it has finished calculating that, let's look and see how many layers we got here. I've got 21 layers, so I don't need the last layer, so I can select the last layer and hit delete. And there we go, 20 layers. Now, Command S, make sure it's saved. So create a camera layer. Go to Layer, New, Camera. And we're just going to go with your default 50mm default settings and say OK. So get your camera tool and using the unified camera tool, so the top one, go into the space, and let's make it bigger so we can see it a little bit better. And you want to rotate around so you can see it from the side. You can see that it has a certain depth to it. Now we can create a new spotlight and play with the light settings. So let's start Layer, New, Light. I'm going to go for a spotlight. And we'll make it somewhat intense. And say OK. I've got casting shadows, shadow darkness 70%, shadow diffusion 10 pixels, and that makes it look nice and smooth on the edges and soft. And now we need to have something for it to cast the shadow on. So let's make a background layer. So Layer, New, Solid. And let's make it a light blue. And of course that immediately comes in front of everything. I'm going to drag it down to the bottom. I don't know if that's exactly the bottom. So we've got it at the bottom. Now we can make that 3D and make sure that it will accept shadows. So let's see. It's thinking. Okay, so now we have to put the solid behind the lettering because it is in front of it right now. So let's go ahead to transform position and we will put it behind. So we'll give it a positive number. And then it will cast a shadow, we hope. Cast shadows, accept shadows on. And these, we have to set one of these, the back layer should be set to cast shadows. So, cast shadow, so only one shadow is cast. And then the front layer we can make into a different color. And you can do that by applying an effect. So select the top source layer and let's apply perspective bevel alpha. And to change the color a little bit, we can apply a color. So let's apply a gradient. Gradient ramp. And it's automatically set to be black and white, and it has the beginning and end preset in these places, so we'll just bring the beginning and end in closer. Have a different start color. Okay, so that can be very interesting. And now it's a good idea to move all of the source layers into their own pre-comp. So select the first source layer and go down to the bottom and select the bottom source layer. And right click, pre-compose, and you can call this final text. And then you make it 3D. And then collapse the transformations by clicking on the asterisk. And there you have it. Command S. And if you want to move it in Z space, you're going to have to make it 3D.